You've seen this movie, is like Twilight. When Bella is pregnant and she gets super skinny, all of my nutrients went to the baby and I couldn't keep hardly anything down. Hey friends, today on the Tiny Titans podcast, my husband and I are going over the story you have been waiting for, Carter Marie, the micro preemie story. She was 22 weeks and 2 days when I had her. She was 1 pound and 7 ounces at birth and 10 inches, but we couldn't really measure her when she was first born because she was so fragile. Anyway, that is the story that we're doing today on the Tiny Titans podcast. Here we go. Welcome back to the Tiny Titans podcast. Today we are going to do I feel like we've been putting it off because it's going to be hard to do. It's a lot of information, but this is Carter's story. So once upon a time, we found out we were pregnant, and then that baby came 4 months early and spent 9.5 months in the NICU, and that is this story. Okay, so then what were you going to say?
I was going to say that's probably the whole reason that you started anything Tiny Titans, your logo that you have.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually originally Tiny Titans. Do you remember what it was?
It was Carter's Cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before, so this is the real reason why I wanted to start the podcast, is just for micro preemie stories, because there's not that many.
Right, not this early.
Yeah.
So, I guess if you want to backstory into the whole thing, we were trying for another baby.
Well,
Ava's a whole nother story.
Yeah. I was like, how do you phase into that?
I know.
So
we lost one in between Cassie and Carter.
Yes.
And then that took some time, and then we were trying again, and then we had Carter, and then you got sick.
Well, but hold on. I want to tell a specific story, because do you remember how we found out about Carter? And
Did you introduce me as anybody, or just I'm...
Oh, this is my husband, Doug. He's going to be doing this story with me, because I was really sick for Carter, and during her birth I was on a lot of medication. So he's going to fill in all the blanks, because I think there are a lot of blanks I don't remember. But to start though, I remember the day that we found out, I was doing a really intense gardening project. Like, I was carrying all those bricks from the backside of the barn to behind the house to make the strawberry bed. Mm-hmm. I did that day, and Cassie helped me, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to get pregnant. We're only going to have one kid.
Yeah, we'd settled in the idea of we're just going to be one and done.
Yeah.
And Carter
have
was
all
a
the
surprise
money.
Because after Ava,
right,
it was, we're done.
Right. Yeah. There was no reason to keep going. We weren't going to keep trying.
Right.
Right. So, but on that day, I was doing this really intense gardening project, and I was like, why am I so tired? Why is this taking forever? And Cassie was trying to help me, and she was almost outworking me. And I was like, she carries the wheelbarrow, and you were like, she's 3.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Yeah. So, yeah, she was really little, but I was feeling really weird, and then I got sick, and I took a pregnancy test, and we were like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. Because, whoa.
Well,
pregnancy after a loss is really scary.
I was just about to say, everything after a loss is scary.
Yeah.
And we had just, resided into, we're done. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden the loss just kind of comes back.
Right.
Of, it's going to happen again.
Or what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or how long can I keep it in this time. So.
A lot of doctor's appointments.
Yeah. So then instantly we were high-risk pregnancy. So that was so many doctor's appointments plus extra medication.
Yeah. Shots to the, I think we were doing them to the belly, weren't we?
No, those were infertility shots. The progesterone shots were the booty shots.
Oh yeah, those ones.
Yep.
So progesterone.
Yeah, to keep her in there.
Well, because you couldn't keep any food down.
Okay, so hold on. There's a ton of information. So first, when we found, do you remember when we talked about it? What happened? Do you remember that day? Like, I remember the day because of the project, and then finding out, like, I remember taking the test and being like, well, that's why I'm exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember you coming home. I thought you came home and I, like, put it on the kitchen counter.
Yeah, and then I saw it, but we weren't like, I wasn't upset.
But we also weren't trying to talk about it because Cassie was still awake.
Yeah. Well, I was working nights at the time.
Yeah.
And I saw the pregnancy test, and then I remember looking at you and being like, "Are you sure? Like you've done multiples. I'm sure already at this time before you telling me."
Yeah, I think this was like the second day.
And then you're telling me, and it's like, okay, we should be happy, but we're both scared.
Oh yeah, it was instant terror for me.
Yeah.
Because of everything that went on with Ava and how long I was like how long it took to get over that physically, and then how long is it in between? Like, Ava was 19, and then Carter was 22.
Yeah. But
so it was like 2 years, like postpartum probably.
Yep.
So yeah, it was crazy. But so yeah, so you.
It's hard to tell Carter's story without the backstory of Ava.
Yeah.
And Ava was a loss at 19 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story to get into, but we had a loss at 19 weeks.
But that just tells you, like, my body wasn't done processing.
And the doctor was like, it's an incompetent cervix. There's nothing we could have done.
And do you remember when my OB kicked us out?
Yeah,
after
she
Ava?
said she didn't want to have us, have you as a patient anymore because you were too high risk for what she wanted to deal with, probably that late in her career.
I mean, maybe, but it was like a really funny conversation with her because she was just like, I think that if you end up pregnant again, you need to go elsewhere. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
We were both leaving but that was what, like a month after?
After Ava, but then so like that's where my head was when we were trying to figure out what to do with Carter. Was like instantly I have to find a new doctor, a high risk doctor. Everything was like gonna have to change.
And then we started going to Coro because we were going up north because of my job being up north.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Coro, and then I just so happened to, shortly before she was born, couple months before she was born, I think it was 2 months before she was born, I got a new job.
Had we found out about her?
I got a job.
And was I pregnant? I was pregnant in March then. Than you.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden she's pregnant and I'm just starting a new job.
And that was the scary part.
Yeah, that was the scary part too because I just left my job with the state and started this new career.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm 2 months into a new career. Yeah. My wife's pregnant. And
super sick.
Yeah.
So I was so sick that like, I think like 6 weeks, it was like 6 weeks, 7 weeks that Mom came to stay with us.
It was a long time.
She lived
with us for 2 years.
She lived with us for at least 2 years, if not longer. But my mom came to stay with us almost instantly because I was drained. And Cassie was gonna be starting preschool, so like it was like that summer before she was starting preschool, so she was like running, she was a toddler, she was running me out of energy by like 10 a.m. and then I felt horrible because I was physically ill for the whole time.
A lot of pregnancy hormones.
Yeah, and then like all of the PTSD from what had just happened with Ava that we had not fully processed either. So, yeah, it was a lot all at one time. So, Mom came to stay to help with Cassie, and that was awesome because we also were going to a ton of different doctor's appointments, and it made it so that Doug was able to come with me to the doctor's appointments because there was a lot of decisions that had to be made that I did not know what to do.
Like the cervical stitch?
Yeah, what did we do, that 13 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
So that was we caught that super early.
That little key right there is important to this whole story. Mm-hmm. The stitch.
Well, because it was supposed to help, and it kind of did, but almost didn't.
It did. Well, the thing about a cervical stitch, and this is, I remember the doctor talking to me who installed it, and this is when you were out.
Like in the procedure.
And then they were wanting like, hey, we have to cut this stitch because it's going to tear if we don't.
Oh, and yeah,
your muscles.
I meant before that, though.
Yeah, I know, but that's why it's important, because
to the story. Yes,
that little key thing right there is also very important.
It was very important during labor.
Decisions had to start to get made, because it was like, either you're going to self-destruct here in a second, or we got to cut it.
Right, but also we only had so much time that we could safely put the stitch in at the beginning of the pregnancy.
And we thought we were going to be good because this is something we've never done before.
Yeah, we had never tried to. We never like actually diagnosed me with incontinent cervix. Incontinent. It might be that as well, but it was not that.
It was whenever you said it. Whenever you said it, I was like, I said incompetent earlier. Hopefully I'm not like being rude. And it was called incontinent, but I'm like, incontinent's not it.
Nope, it's not incontinent.
And,
that was me.
But then, yeah, so.
Okay, so we need to go back and define some.
We'll catch them.
Some things. So, the cervical stitch is a stitch, and they only did one, right? They didn't do two. I think it was just one.
Okay, so it has to do with the length.
Yeah.
Of your cervix.
Yeah, and each woman's
and
different.
They measure it, and you had plenty of room, because as the baby grows or gets lower in the uterus, the cervix goes from, and then widens, and then opens. Well, they wanted to put a stitch, and I remember they having a picture of it, and this is weird that I know all this, but they had your cervix, and like, we're going to come in like right here and put a stitch in, and that'll stop it. And the reason that's important is because I remember on one of the checkups, all of a sudden it was like it had gotten shorter, to where instead of it being like,
the picture changed.
The picture had changed a couple visits later, to where all of a sudden, we had this much room. It was really close to that stitch, and I think that's why we didn't have such an early delivery with Carter, is because they're like, that's why the stitch is there. And we kept hearing that, and that's when you went and your appointments really amped up.
Yeah. Well, so then also, the stitch was causing other problems.
A lot of discomfort.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've had a cervical stitch. Everyone's experience is different. But when I had a cervical stitch, the tail was long enough that I could feel it. It's basically just like a knot.
I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember them going back in and trimming
it? He did, but I could still feel it.
Yeah.
It's like a little piece of fishing wire that's just poking you on the inside, and it will happen randomly when you sit down in a weird position, or like you're putting your pants on, and just like poke you.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't feel good.
No. So it was a very weird thing to get used to, but then also we found out that I was having like some bacterial problems, which I had not had problems with previously, but it was because that stitch was sort of like opening, because my cervix was opening, and so things were like moving, and it was like rubbing against stuff and opening wounds, basically. Like,
well, I mean, it had a sharp tail that would poke you.
Right. Yeah, but I was not thinking that it was going to consistently poke you and then create an extra problem. Yeah. Hey friends, me again. If you're enjoying today's story, don't forget to click the subscribe button so you can get all the notifications on the new Tiny Titans episodes. Back to the story. So, the stitch actually, I think, probably caused the infection, which caused me to go into labor early.
That's believable.
I think.
Well, part of the reason you went into labor earlier is because what they called Coro, which is...
That's the infection.
But it's... And I'm going off of memory here, so don't Google me. Is they call it Coro because it's every infection. It's like, it's a conglomerate of multiple infections.
Yeah, all over the placenta.
And they said we just call it Coro at this point because it's sick.
Yeah, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working the way it was supposed to work either. Yes.
So.
And it was making me sick too.
Yeah. Well, you being sick, like this is bed all the time.
Oh yeah, that kind of sick.
Like it was me and your mom running the house, and me working a full-time job with a toddler, and you
sleeping and throwing up.
Yep. And trying to keep food down.
Yep, and I lost like 10 pounds at the beginning
during the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like when you were done, and it was like, okay, Carter's coming. I think you were like up maybe 10 pounds
It
total.
was like that. I know you haven't seen this movie, but I know you've seen this movie. It's like Twilight. When Bella is pregnant and she gets super skinny, all of my nutrients went to the baby, and I couldn't keep hardly anything down.
Yeah.
And what I did keep down, I eventually threw up. So I was dehydrated and like malnourished, and everything was going to her. So
yeah, it was a fight to get you to eat. It was like I had 2 toddlers to feed.
Yeah.
You and Cassie.
Well, you get tired of putting it in your mouth, and instantly your stomach's like, no thank you. So then I had like acid reflux at this time because of it, and like my throat was constantly sore from like, I mean, to be honest, I was also crying a good amount of the time, but crying and throwing up, my throat was raw all the time, so I didn't want to eat. It hurt to eat. So it was a very weird pregnancy coming off of Cassie, which was basically the perfect pregnancy, where I gained the 35 pounds that they suggest.
It still wasn't
and I
perfect
ate a
pregnancy.
ton of food all the time. Well,
so the other thing,
it
whenever
was a lot
we
better pregnancy.
talk about being in the NICU for as long as we were, and I think you even showed me TikTok videos and people of micro preemies, if it's not your first or your second, twin, something like that. Anytime you end up in the NICU, it's never planned.
Yeah.
And that was something that I know when you've been in the hospital for so long, you see a mom, like, cause everybody scrubs up before you go into the actual neonatal unit. And I remember sitting there scrubbing, and this lady's just kind of crying next to me, scrubbing up to go in. And she was like, "Oh, I've been here 5 days, And I'm
Which
like,
is hard.
We've been here 200. And she just was blown away.
Crying.
Yeah, and then I'm like, no, don't cry. She's not, 200's good because that means she's older. And she's still here, not like I wanted to go home. Cassidy, we were in the hospital for 21 days.
Yeah.
And that was like, we talked about it like coming out of a war.
Yeah. Well, it was like the worst thing we had been through.
Well, also we had
I
me
was
working
too.
C-section. I left you in Chicago, and then I was living at home 2.5 hours away, trying to take care of the house, and work.
Right.
And I would get off nights. I was working 410s, and then I'd go already have a bag packed, and then leave work to Chicago, and then come back Sunday night to be at work, Monday or something like that, and that'd leave me some time to clean or trash or just live in the house for a week.
Also, it was important to note that we had 5 acres at the time, so there was upkeep. There was upkeep that needed to be done like at least once a week.
Well, not only that, we were working on a house. Bathroom wasn't finished.
Mm-hmm.
Garage wasn't finished.
Because we were prepping for a baby.
Yeah. Oh, so Carter.
Oh yeah, back to Carter.
Your cervical stitch is done. You're sick all the time.
So then that was like 14, 15 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Which is important because we only go to 22. So every week counts in Carter's story.
Thought you were having her before.
Yeah, I went
twice.
Yeah.
And it was the third time you're like, I'm just going to go. You drove yourself. And then
Nope, that was Colby. With Carter, I went 2 times. Yep. With Carter, I went 2 times, and I have it written down. I had started bleeding different times, and they didn't know exactly if it was because I was already starting to shallow. My cervix was already starting to shallow. So it wasn't like opening, but it was thinning up and getting ready to open. Mm-hmm. And so it was already sort of pulling on that stitch. So then they were like, is it bleeding because it's pulling on the stitch, or is there something else that's happening? So we
nobody knew that you were sick at this time either.
No, we didn't know that I had choreo at all.
So
which apparently we could have known weeks ahead of time, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, nobody was testing for it.
Right. So then I remember the morning that we decided to go down. Mom had taken a break. Mom had gone home. Right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Mom had gone home.
Did we have Cass with us?
Yeah, because Cass went to stay, and Mom picked her up from Dan and Lexi's.
Okay.
So also important to the story because we just were like, hey, we have to go to the hospital now because I might be in labor.
We dropped her off and then I remember, and then that's when we had the red car, and you were having false contractions or contractions.
No, for full on labor.
But you were having contractions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember speeding, and I've never seen so many cops. I remember it being like, oh, this town has a cop, this town has a cop,
and there
this
he
town
is.
has a cop. And then you're bent over.
I was reversed in the passenger seat with my arms around the headrest, just like holding on as much as I could and trying to like force myself into a ball because the farther it felt like the closer we got to the hospital, the more intense the contractions were getting.
It's also important to note that if we would have gone to our local hospital, they would have ambulance routed us north, and we didn't want to go north. Yes. We needed to go south because we also knew that even if we went north and we had a small baby, they would ship us even farther north, and we didn't want to be that far away from work and home.
And we would not have known any of that to discuss any of that if we had not had a NICU baby before. Or a loss, right. So because there was a lot of information that we didn't want to go up north.
Yeah, we didn't want to go back north.
So we just had decided that we definitely didn't.
We have to make it south.
Right, because you only have high enough NICUs in so many places in the country. So there's only 5 or 6 hospitals that will take like a 22-week delivery, and there's 2 in Illinois.
I was gonna say there's Peoria.
3: Peoria, Coro, and Chicago.
And then there's St. Louis, which is just as far from us as it is Chicago.
Right. So then that's where do you want to stay? How far from your house?
Yeah.
And we're thinking all of this while I'm actively going into labor. Like, I am having bleeding. We're both like worried, and I'm starting to have cramps and all sorts of things. Plus, we have a toddler running around.
Yep. Threw a toddler out at my brother's house and said, "I'll take care of this for a week."
So we were. So that's almost exactly what happened because my mom was gone back to her house in Missouri. So she instantly, we called her and she was like, "Okay, I'm packing my bag. I'll come right back."
I think she was home for like
2 days. Yes, she was taking a break. She was going to be gone for a while. And then because we had just gone to the hospital. I think we went on like a Tuesday.
Yep. She went back home to try to go to church and
yeah. So I had just gotten checked. We had just done everything. So we thought that we were okay.
So something that we did with this pregnancy that we didn't do with others is like with Cassie, you have like the first baby. Ooh, I should go to the hospital. I'm scared. And it's like, no, hold on.
Is it worth the drive?
Well, but not. You went and it's like 10 minutes, 20 minutes later, it's like, oh, I feel better.
Yeah.
And then Ava was kind of the same.
We thought it was gas pain.
We thought a lot of gas pain, pregnancy pain, ligament, things move.
Right.
And then with Carter, I remember having the rule in my head that was like, we go.
Yeah, it's just better safe than sorry. So that was what we decided that morning.
Yep. It's like, well, if you're, and that's the thing though, this trip where it's like, I think it's labor, and like we start packing, we start talking, we start thinking, and then it turned into like, okay, yep, we're right, we're going.
Yeah.
Was the third time where it's like, I remember you coming to me and being like, I'm sorry, but I think we need to go.
Yes, that.
Like you were apologetic because I'm like, another weekend gone, another overnight in the hospital.
It was all the time
hard because you were sick, and then your mom was gone, and then there's kids to take care of, and then it's like,
right.
It's just, it was hard, and I remember being like, we have to go.
Yeah, we still have to go.
Have to go.
So, and it was a good thing that we decided to go then because we were able to just safely drop off Cassie and drive down. So it was an hour and a half at least. And I'm pretty sure we made it in like 45 minutes. Because
we went fast.
You were going faster the more that I was like, this is hurting a lot more. And then you were helping me try and time contractions because we knew all the questions they were going to ask.
Yep.
So then we were trying to like discuss this while I'm like crying into the car seat headrest. So when we What happened when we got there? Like, I remember, because we have to, like, we got out in emergency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did we
No,
had
I
called,
don't
we
think-
called in.
We called
We
in.
called in and said that we
You
were
went
coming.
down to the basement first. It was MFA? Not
Oh,
MFA.
yeah. So I was
Maternal
seeing...
fetal medicine?
Yeah, I was seeing the maternal fetal medicine.
And then they hooked you up. They were going to hook you up to see if it was labor.
I couldn't. I was,
As
like, squatting on the floor.
As soon as we wheeled you in a wheelchair, they took one look at you and they said, you need to go to labor and delivery.
Yeah.
And then I was like...
Which is all the way up to 8 and across the hospital.
Yeah.
So it was a really long drive.
But they went with us. I mean,
I'm not saying it wasn't.
It was nice.
Yeah.
Because they were very professional.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to head south.
Right.
And
we like that hospital.
It was like, nope, you need to go here, and
right.
we will walk you there.
Immediately.
And we will take the employee service elevator, whatever, to get to where...
Well, and they also, like, set everything up, too, with labor and delivery. We didn't have to do as many questions.
Yep.
For example, when we were doing this emergency C-section with Cassie, they asked us a million questions with all the paperwork immediately, and we were like...
That was 15 minutes.
It was a lot, and I don't even remember
15 minutes, and then...
what I signed.
I know, not only that, they wouldn't talk to me.
Right. So then we already had, like, everything figured out at Carl.
Yep.
And the only thing we had not done at Carl, which we should have done, we should have had forethought to do it, is to tour the NICU.
Yeah, but still.
I mean, I think it brought him in.
We didn't think... Okay, vitality was at...
Viability.
Was at 22.
4 in Illinois.
Well, no. I'm saying the earliest they could deliver.
They would only say 24. Remember, that's why this was such a big deal.
Well, we didn't tour because we weren't there.
Right.
There was no need to take a tour until you hit...
viability.
Yeah.
Yes, and they said that at my anatomy scan, okay, now you can...
Yep, they would have done it all in that day, but we never made it there.
No, we did her anatomy scan. We found out she was a girl, remember?
No.
Yep.
I remember it being a whirlwind of...
Okay, so let's talk about that then, because it was right around your birthday. We had your 30th big birthday party. Mm-hmm. And we had just found out
I can tell you
that
10 days later.
So right before we had your birthday party,
That's
week we found out that she was a girl.
Yep, I remember now.
And then Cassie did the balloon thing and the confetti. Mm-hmm. So we knew all of that type of stuff, and so that was the next thing on our list. But we never actually got that far because every time we went to the hospital, it was to check. It was a full-on checkup. So, so when we went to the hospital, I instantly triaged and got me all set up, and then tried to stop labor, and then we had to meet with the surgeon who put in my cerclage.
That's what it's called.
Cerclage to get it taken out.
Yep, but they wanted to leave it in.
And well, they're trying to keep her in as long as possible.
You had started...
Okay, we're going to have to take a pause because the babies are up now, so we'll give this a part 2. Stay tuned for the next part of Carter's birth story at 22 weeks. Wanna say bye?
Bye.
Bye.